Greetings, everybody, from English speakers to those who are listening to this through the magic of subtitles. We are here in Zoom. Today, it's October the 19th, 2021, to celebrate a very special occasion for the Doctor Who fandom in Spain. In 1 week's time, Dolmen Publishing will be releasing their second Doctor Who novel in our language after Prisoner of the Daleks by Trevor Baxendale, none other than the highly popular and praised Touched by an Angel with Matt Smith's 11th Doctor. And because of that, today in the Hand of Omega, we are very lucky to have with us, by far, one of the most prolific and best, even if I say so myself, writers from the Doctor Who expanded universe. I am talking about audio, short stories, novels, and a person whose work I've been aware of and admired for the longest time. Here with us right now is the author of the book itself, Mr. Jonathan Morris. How are you today, Johnny?
Hello, it's lovely to be here, and I'll certainly take prolific. I can't argue with the prolific part of your description, but I'm a big Doctor Who fan, so I just say yes to everything. That's the secret of being prolific, is not to turn down anything. So whenever someone says, "Do you want to do a book? Do you want to do a comic strip?" I just say, "It's Doctor Who." Yes, please.
Of course, once again, thank you for being here. But we have some time, but since everything is limited, let's get right away with the question, shall we?
Okay.
And this is one thing, because there have been Doctor Who companions in this podcast, and I ask this to pretty much everybody. So I gotta ask, have you ever been to Spain, actually?
No, I don't. I think I might have been on a flight which stopped there on the way to somewhere, but I have. Spain is still on my list because I'm still desperate to see the cathedral, La Sagrada Familia. So just as soon as it's finished, I'll come and visit you.
I think to see it finished, we're gonna have to use like cryogenic. I was working in Barcelona not too long ago, and well, I got to see it, and it's amazing anyway. But you know what I mean. But of course, now starting on the Doctor Who topic, you were born in 1973. So I would like to ask you first about what are your earliest and favorite memories from the show growing up?
Well, I started watching it very, very young. I think I was about 4 or 5 years old when it was the fourth Doctor. It was Tom Baker and K9, and I think I was more interested in K9's adventures than the Doctor's adventures to begin with, because I think he fascinated me as the robot dog, and that sort of kept going. I started reading those there were books published by a company called Target, which were sort of novelizations of the TV stories, which you couldn't get on. There was before videos or DVDs or streaming, and I read those books more than anything else. I just sort of ate them all up. I streamed the novels, and then that sort of became me writing my own stories. And even when sort of Doctor Who was off television, the things like the books and the comic strip in the magazine and so on just sort of kept it going.
Yeah.
And even when it was they stopped making it in 1989. There were still the books and the comic strips and audios and stuff. So unlike some things where you can get it into it for a while, you can be a big fan of something for a while, like I don't know, Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon or something, and then it stops and they stop making it, and you go away and get interested in something else. With Doctor Who, it never had that, never properly stopped. And so I did spend some time, 10 years away from it. But then in the late 1990s, I started reading the books again, because they were doing books like Touched by an Angel, which were new stories, not based on ones on television. And I started reading those, and I wrote one, which is how I sort of got into writing Doctor Who things.
And now that you mentioned that, when you were watching back then Doctor Who, do you remember a specific moment where you realized you wanted to become a writer?
Not really watching it. There was a there was an interview in the Doctor Who magazine with one of the very early writers of Doctor Who, a guy called Dennis Spooner. He wrote the Romans and a few things, other things, and it was a 5-page interview about his life and him being a script editor for Doctor Who. And so I would be about 7 years old, and the teacher says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I would put my hand up and go, "I want to be a script editor." And the teachers go, "I have no idea what that job is."
Yeah.
I'm going, "It's really good. What it is other people send in scripts and you fix them and you tell them what they're doing wrong. And then they go away and they have to do what you tell them." And that just seemed the perfect job. In terms of writing, I was always writing stories, and certainly when I was a kid, I was entered into various competitions where I'd win them, and when you win prizes, you sort of get the sense of, "Oh, I'm good at this. This is the thing I'm good at." And I'm rubbish at football and cricket and singing and stuff, but writing, that's the thing. That's the thing where people praise me. And then later on, many years later, when I did a Doctor Who short story for a charity book, people said lots of really nice things about that. So that encouraged me to have a go at writing Doctor Who books professionally.
Yeah. Now that you mention it also, and speaking specifically now about your work, you've pretty much covered every era of the show, from William Hartnell to the current modern series. So my question is there any specific Doctor and or companions you feel especially comfortable writing?
I think it's going to be the ones that were around when I was growing up, because I certainly, as soon as I got a video recorder, I taped the Doctor Who stories off the television and watched them again and again and again. So the voices of the 4th, 5th, and 6th and 7th Doctors are very easy to summon up inside my head. I can get that actor's voice or that character's voice. And certainly some companions from when they're like Romana and Tegan in particular are very sort of strong folk characters, and they're quite strongly defined. Whereas if you're thinking of I don't know, writing a story with I don't know, Nissa possibly, you have to do a bit more work. You have to sort of expand the character from what was on television. So yeah, those are the ones which are stronger. The earlier ones are just, watching DVDs and stuff. And even now, I still can't quite get the 3rd Doctor, but I'll keep trying.
Yeah, I see. And also, you mentioned the 4th Doctor, and now we're talking about your novels. Since you started on the old BBC line of books, which featured the classic Doctors, the 8th Doctor, I think Anacrophobia was one of your first, but the one which caught everyone's attention back in 2000 was, of course, Festival of Earth with the 4th Doctor and Romana. Now, even though it was Steven Moffat who made the timey-wimey concept famous, you really run wild with it there on this book. To me, even though, despite that, it was such a tight storyline. So my question is, how hard was it pulling it together?
It was terrifically hard, extremely hard. I mean, the timey-wimey thing was just one of those ideas where I think in the second Back to the Future film, it has this wonderful bit at the end where Marty McFly is running around in the background of the first film. And that I just found that a fascinating idea, that you could do so much more with that, and that Doctor Who had never really done it. And then I just had the idea of the Doctor arrives in a story and everyone's thanking him, going, "Thank you for defeating the bad guy. That was really nice." And then he just steps out the TARDIS and he gets a round of applause, and he's going, "But I haven't done it yet."
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's just a obvious idea of, and I'm not sure it makes any logical sense, but certainly, and certainly Steven Moffat took that a little bit further. But with Festival of Death, I was trying to do all the things you can do with time travel all in one book, because it was my first go. So I was sort of wanted to show off and grab people's attention, but it was incredibly difficult. I just remember the route I took from my house to work was about an hour's walk, and again an hour's walk back. And every single time for about the 3 months I was writing the book, that was every hour there and back. I was just going, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. The next bit doesn't make sense. How can I fix it? How can I get it all to work? And the editor of the range, a guy called Justin Richards, was also very helpful, because he was going, before you start writing anything, do a map, do a flow chart of how it all fits together, because as long as you stick to the map, as long as you stick to the plan, you'll be okay. But as soon as you start moving off of it, it has a knock-on effect for the other bits of the story that you have to then go back and change again. So I think it just about pulled together. I think it all, I mean, I read it and I go, there's about 3 or 4 things in it. I go, that was a bit of a cheat. I cheated there, but people haven't noticed those bits. So I got away with it.
And the thing is, I remember reading it, I think probably a year and a half ago, and I still haven't quite recovered from that epilogue with the villain.
Oh yeah, I think I just came up with that as a sort of a cruel thing to them to do, that they're stuck in. I mean, one of the ideas of the story is that when the Doctor goes back in time, he can change stuff. But when normal people go back in time, they are sort of forced to relive their life again. They can't change things. It's a sort of the idea of whether if you go back in time, whether you could shoot your grandfather, or whether the laws of physics would prevent you from doing that. And so it was the idea that this person's trapped within their own life to relive it, and they can watch it, they can hear it, but they are unable to change anything.
Yeah.
And of course, as soon as the book came out, I think within about 2 weeks, someone went, "Oh, that's just copying the end of Being John Malkovich." And I was going, I haven't. Okay, I'm quite happy to admit all the times I have taken ideas from it, but I hadn't seen Being John Malkovich. It was just a coincidence. But yeah, I did. I mean, they were completely correct to point out the similarity there.
Yeah. But going now with the Eighth Doctor, another one of your famous stories is one of the very last from that collection called The Tomorrow Windows, and a lot of people point to the fact that it is heavily influenced by one Douglas Adams, which was of course former script editor of Doctor Who, but known mostly for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So why did you choose that style for that particular novel?
That's I'm casting my mind back now. I think I'd done Anachrophobia, which was me trying to be very, very dark and serious, and so it was a reaction against that, I think. And if I remember correctly, I think Douglas Adams had recently died when I wrote it, so it was kind of my idea of doing a tribute to him, because he had been a huge influence on my writing, and eventually it turned out my life. So I just wanted to do a tribute, and to do the sort of thought experiment of, if Douglas Adams was alive and was writing a Doctor Who story, what sort of thing would he do now? And I mean, the Tomorrow Windows is a glorious hodgepodge of a mess of bits of this and bits of that and bits of that. It's all different bits of things stuck together. But one of the main things is the idea of Easter Island, and the idea that people don't realize that they're living in a sort of a closed system of in terms of the environment, that you think, oh, we can always get some more land over there, we can always get more food. It doesn't matter if we trash our own little place, someone will come along and fix it. And I mean, the story of Easter Island is that they made themselves extinct because they chopped down all the trees, which meant they couldn't build any boats, which meant they couldn't go fishing, which meant they sort of starved to death, and they just kept on building huge statues instead, which didn't do them any good in the long run. And you just go, that's a mini version of the whole world. I mean, I'd read a book by called Gun, Germs and Steel, which was about the whole sort of theory of history being based around resources rather than the normal history of kings and queens and emperors. And that fed into it a lot too.
But now, obviously, getting to the main reason we are here today, your new series, 11th Doctor novel, Touched by an Angel, is coming out here in Spain in a week from now. Once again, October the 28th, translated to the Spanish language. And a lot of people over there have the opinion that it's easily the best new novel out there, where you were given none other than the Weeping Angels to play with. So my first question about it is, what was your initial reaction from watching Blink during Series 3 in 2007?
Well, I was kind of lucky, I think, with Blink, because I actually watched it at Steven Moffat's house.
Wow.
Because I'm friends with him, and he was a big going. He was very excited going, I've written a Doctor Who story they're putting on television, and so he'd invited all his friends around. So I turned up about 5 minutes late, and so he's sitting there having paused his television, going, and then I think Tom McRae turned up after me, so I wasn't the last person. And then people like Rob Shearman and stuff were there, I think, and so we all watched it with Stephen. And my main memory of it, this is an odd thing, is that he had his television on the wrong setting. He had it on a sort of a thing where it makes any TV program look like videotape.
Huh. So
we were watching. I was going, this looks like it was made in the 80s. This looks really cheap. I can't say anything, but this looks like Ghostlight. And then I'd go home and watch it properly and go, oh, it was his television. It was on the wrong setting. He doesn't know. He watches everything like that. Oh my God. But it's one of those things of going, he wrote a brilliant story, and you just go, but what can you say? You go, well done. And that's fantastic. And I think we all went for a curry after that, I think. So yeah, that's my memory. I was right in the middle of it for that one.
Now about the book itself, you did use a similar device that the TV story did, focusing on a new character instead of the Doctor and his companions, which were in this case Amy and Rory, called Mark Whittaker, I think, who is a man who has just lost his wife. So I'd like to ask you, why did you decide to use that type of narrative?
It just came out of the story, really. I think it wasn't based on any particular previous Doctor Who story. This is me confessing to my me nicking ideas, but there was a book which came out a couple of years earlier called One Day by David Nichols, which is about it's a love story, and then the girl gets killed when a lorry knocks off her bicycle, and it's very, very sad. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. And my sort of reaction to going, that would be good, but it needs more time travel. It needs what if the guy at the end of one day could go back in time and stop his girlfriend being knocked off that bicycle? And so that was the sort of the pitch I had, which was called I've got the story here, which was called The Paradox Man, which was just about this guy who's been given the opportunity to go back in time and save his wife. And I sent that in along with another idea about closed circuit TVs, about monsters that live inside televisions, basically. And Justin Richards, and along with Justin Richards, went, I like those two ideas. Can you put them both in the book? And can you put the Weeping Angels in there as well?
Oh.
And because I hadn't thought of putting the weeping angels in. I just made up some other monsters that fed
Oh.
on time paradoxes. And I was going, that's great. Yes, please, because if there's a weeping angel on the front of my book, it will sell more copies. More people,
Yeah.
more people will buy that one. Plus, at the time, Blink had been made, but this was, and the first Matt Smith two-parter with the Weeping Angels had come out, but they were still very new monsters where people hadn't done a lot with them.
Okay.
So, I mean, one of the odd things is I wrote the book and it came out before the Angels in Manhattan story. So I was watching The Angels in Manhattan going, this is all good, but please let it not contradict my book. And it doesn't. It's brilliant because in the Angels in Take Manhattan, Rory knows what weeping angels are. And he can only have known them because he encountered them in Touched by an Angel. So it all still fits together more or less.
Okay, so now that we've dealt with said book, there's one thing I wanted to ask you for the longest time, and it's actually a very pertinent question given recent news, because on your Twitter description you have a quote from the man himself, Russell T. Davies, which states, "Everyone should have added Johnny Morris." So in what context did he actually say that?
It is regarding a specific project. He wrote a Doctor Who book called Damaged Goods many years ago, back in the 90s, and I did the Big Finish adaptation of it. And there were sort of two big reasons why I wanted to do that. One was because it was Russell, obviously, but also the second reason was that everyone had gone, well, you can't adapt that book. It's impossible because it's the way it's written isn't like a TV show or an audio, and the content in terms of the sex and drugs and violence and stuff is far too strong. You couldn't make it work. And whenever people say that, I just go, well, I bet I could do it. I'd like to have a go. I can only fail. And so when I was writing it, I was, because the book doesn't have many scenes in the conventional sense of characters just standing around talking, I was writing it. I mean, if Damaged Goods, I think about 90% of that is me pretending to be Russell, and 10% is actual Russell's book. And the point I was trying to do is to go, my writing pretending to be him should not be noticeable. You should be able to tell the difference. And when Russell read it and emailed back, he was going, well, I can't tell the difference. I don't know which bits were you and which bits were me. But he only noticed a couple of bits going, oh, that's added Johnny Morris. I like that. So.
And wrapping things up and finishing, speaking about Russell, I gotta address the big elephant in the room and ask you the obvious thing. So how you feel about the news of RTD coming back to produce the series in 2023?
It's terrifically. When I heard the news, I was surprised and delighted. I think because I've been discussing it with various friends. I don't know who's going to take over. It was a bit of a sort of a catch-22 situation of all the writers who were successful enough to do it were so successful they wouldn't want to do it, and all the writers who wanted to do it weren't successful enough to do it. So it was an odd situation to be in, and everyone had made up their little lists of going who we think might be asked, and I don't think it occurred to anyone that Russell might come back.
No, I don't think so.
Because he'd never sort of, he'd always been very nice about the job and sort of making jokes, or what we thought were jokes, about coming back. So yeah, it's extraordinary. I think it's very exciting, but it's also exciting because I don't think it will be like it was with Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant. I think Russell has grown and changed as a writer. Television has changed, and I think the big difference now, I think, is that certainly the way television is made in the UK is, I think this is the new phase of Doctor Who being made for an international market. And I think the idea of Doctor Who being made by the BBC for a Great British audience is in the past. I think that's going to become a minor consideration, because when you have TV shows like the Squid Games, where you go, it's being watched by 200 million people worldwide, you go, that's the future of television. We are no longer making TV shows for one country,
right?
And so I think Doctor Who is going to be getting bigger. I hope it's getting bigger.
Of course. And finally, last but not least, for the people who don't know you and your work, because this is also on your Twitter description, would you like to explain to us what is your own sci-fi project, Dick Dixon?
Oh, well, that's because I write lots of sort of comedy scripts as a sort of another career. I've had TV pilots made, I've written for sketch shows and things like that. And I'd written this one, which I thought was quite funny. But it was also far too rude for the BBC to take it on. And so I sort of sent it to Toby and stuff and sort of went, oh, well, that was fun to write. And then the lockdown happened. And then lots of actors got home studios set up. So suddenly the cost and practicality of recording an audio episode, the cost went down by a lot. It halved basically, because you no longer needed to book a studio, which was always a huge cost. And so Toby was going, well, everyone else is just doing podcasts and stuff. Why don't you just make the episode? Why don't you get some actors and make it? And I thought that'd be an interesting thing to do, and to prove that I can produce stuff, because with Big Finish, it's always been someone else producing it or someone else directing it. And with this, I've had far more control over the project in terms of casting and the final product. And I think it's really good. I mean, I don't know how much, whether it will ever make any money, but in terms of me getting the skills out of it, it's extraordinary. So and the episodes 2 and 3, which I've now got copies of, are even better. They are hilarious. So I recommend them to your listeners. They're also very, very cheap, very, very cheap. They cost about the same as a cup of coffee and a sandwich. They are very, so you have very little to lose by listening to them. And I think anyone who loves things like Doctor Who and Blake Seven and Star Trek and Buck Rogers will find a huge amount to enjoy in them.
So, well, basically that's everything we wanted to cover today. So once again, I would like to say thanks to Johnny for spending time with us here today. But before we leave, is there anything from your work coming up or social media you'd like to promote?
Oh goodness, I think I think all your listeners should buy the new version of Touched by an Angel. I mean, I'm very excited by that. I think because I wrote it nearly 10 years ago, I think it was, and it's just kept on going, and it's just lovely that more people are reading it, and it's being published in Germany and Russia and Italy, and I think France was on the list at one point, and now Spain. It's like, I'm an international international selling author, not an international best-selling author yet, but international selling author. And that's so I recommend that because I think that is one of the best things I've ever done, and I'm very, very proud of it. And I think it is, when I was writing it, I was going, I'm going to write the best Doctor Who book. Move over human nature, forget that one. I'm going to write the best one. And I'm not going to say whether I succeeded or not, but if I fell short, it wasn't by much. I think that just one of those projects where everything comes together, and it worked out really well. So buy my book.
And of course, you should be proud of it because it's absolutely wonderful, that novel. But we've come to the conclusion of the program. And once again, this was Javi Ubede, and you've been listening to The Hand of Omega with Jonathan Morris. Remember, Touched by an Angel coming out today, probably when you're hearing this out on the podcast and on YouTube, October the 28th. So if you can afford it, go get it at your nearest bookshop. That's all from us this time. Until the next one, have a nice day, everybody, and goodbye.